Hey, I'm Shaye Warner, and you are listening to the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast. Whether you are a seasoned rancher or just curious about the cattle world, this podcast dives into the stories, science, and strategies shaping the future of ranching. Let's get started and keep your herd ahead of the herd. Folks, today we are visiting with Rocky Brown, and we are going to be talking about fall and winter watering systems that help keep water flowing and, quite honestly, just reduce the headache of chopping ice and having freezing hands working on tanks that failed you in the winter months. So this is going to be a great episode whether you are wrapping up a final winter watering project or if you are already maybe a little dissatisfied with how one worked for your fall grazing this year and you want to make improvements for next year. I know for some of you this may feel a little later, and for others who are maybe in the south, some of this might still be applicable. But regardless, Rocky is going to show a lot of visuals, so this might be a great one for you normal audio listeners to go check out on YouTube. But even if you do want to listen to the audio, Rocky does a great job explaining things, talking through them, and not just showing the mechanism itself. But with that, let's get to the conversation. All right, Rocky, well, I'm glad we finally got something worked out to do this podcast. For those listening, Rocky operates the hometown fencing, well, really everything supply store for farmers and ranchers in my area. So Rocky, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so to start off, can you tell the listeners why you believe in the beef industry?
Oh, the beef industry, I mean, it's tough when you only choose one. I am a livestock industry kind of guy. It doesn't matter if it's got 4 legs or 2 legs, as long as it's not a human, I love them. The beef industry as a whole has just been great for all industry. Like when the beef producers are making money, the entire industry in the state of North Dakota is making money. They give back to their communities and they care. But bigger than that is it's the greatest food that you can possibly eat. You can take every vegetable off the plate as long as there is a steak there. It's the most nutrient dense protein source and food source that a human being can eat. We can actually sustain life just off of beef. And so that is why I do love the beef industry. But the beef industry is a lot more than the food itself. The producers that are out there, they're the salt of the earth type people. And I'll give it to the 99% of them. There's always the 1% that you could probably live without in any industry. But the beef producers themselves are just great people. You get to sit and have conversations about whatever, when it goes from politics to the feedstuffs to what they're doing with their money and their livelihood and what they're going to do when they retire. Most of them don't even retire. They just slow down. They retire the day they die. On 90% of all beef operations, none of them ever truly 100% walk away. They just keep wanting to stick around, help out the next generation, be a part of it, and just do what they can do as long as their body allows them to do it. So love the beef industry. I have nothing against the farming side, the grain production side of industry, but the beef industry people, they are go-getters. They retire out of one area and they just keep raising beef because they just love what they're doing. They love the life that they get to provide when they go out at 3 in the morning at the age of 70 to see a new calf be born and to help them out. There's very few other industries that at that age are still going out there and truly enjoying what they're doing. I'm not saying there aren't complaints in the day, but they are truly enjoying what they're doing.
Absolutely. Now, you yourself are very experienced in raising multiple livestock or species of livestock. And today we're going to be talking about winter watering solutions more specifically for your cattle ranchers. But do you want to tell listeners briefly a little bit about your experience with this business and how that gives you a little more experience on the winter watering side as well?
This business is just a great business. Wald Fencing, 90% of the products that are sold at Wald Fencing have been handpicked by our consumers. They've been at some random egg show. They saw something on a YouTube. They saw it on a podcast. They saw it at wherever, another store. And they're like, oh, you got to get this. This thing is so cool. You got to start selling this. We need this. So we are very customer driven on what we're selling here. It just comes so easy for us to sell the products when the customer's the one begging us to sell it to them. We're going to talk a little bit later on about Ritchie Waters, and I was not going to be a Ritchie Water dealer, not because I didn't like the product, because there was another dealer very close by, and I had no real reason to be involved with that. After 4 customers in a row came to me asking me to sell Ritchie Waters, I became a dealer for them. So we're very customer driven. Our store is a little different than most other egg supply stores you're going to go to. We don't care as much about the human as we do about the animal. We don't have a pair of coveralls in the place. We don't have a pair of muck boots. We don't have a lot of girly things. We have a pair of gloves. We have now gotten into Milwaukee where we are selling a few heated jackets. But after that, that's about as close to apparel as we're going to get. We do have some pop and candy bars, I guess. But after that, we don't care about the human. We care about the animal, either taking care of it, feeding it, watering it, or keeping it where it belongs. And so we just focus on those types of things. And it's made our company grow exponentially over the last 10 years. The company's been in business since about 1998, mostly as a custom fencing company. And then in 2015, when I got involved, we really grew into the retail and now wholesale side of our business. And we help a lot of other custom fencers with what they need to do. But we help a lot of just ranchers of, what do we do? How do we do this? Do you have this? And most of the time they're shocked when I say, yes, I either have it, or no, I don't have it, but I know how to get it. Where a lot of other stores that they're used to, nope, we don't have it, sorry, and they don't ever put forth that extra effort. So our employees are just phenomenal of asking questions. Another big difference is our employees all have either currently have livestock or have had livestock at some point in their life. And so that goes a long ways, because we're not just sellers of the product, we're also end users of our own product.
All right. Now, on the topic of winter watering, what are the top, maybe 3 considerations that ranchers should keep in mind if they're putting in a new system?
All right. Well, that's a very loaded question that could go on. It's going to be a lot longer podcast than most are used to. So winter watering, you got really 2 choices. Is it a temporary winter watering that we're just trying to use up some residue grazing, or are we going permanent winter watering, and they're going to be there where we're running our cows on this 40-acre area, and this is where they're going to be calved out and they're going to hang out here, or are we running 1,000-head feedlot operation? So you got to consider out which one we're doing. It temporary or long term. Really, I guess you got to think that route. There's a lot of temporary options that we have here, and that's what most people are most interested in. The long-term stuff are all pretty common. You're going to talk your Cobets, you're going to talk your Ritchies, you're going to talk your concrete type waterers that already have heating elements involved with them, or you're going to talk tire tanks, things of that nature. That's more of your permanent side of things. Where a lot of people struggle the most is really on your temporary winter grazing or fall grazing, going into that January. It kind of depends on where you live, what you consider winter. Like a Texas winter versus a North Dakota winter, we're talking vastly different things. Although Texas can get the shock and awe out of some snow once in a while, and it's pure pandemic. So you got to really kind of differentiate those things. But the biggest thing is, if water is moving, water's not freezing. So if you can keep that going, and water is always moving, your water is fine. So those are kind of some differences we're looking at.
Do you want to talk or touch on some solutions or options for those temporary watering scenarios? Because I know this audience really likes, I know a lot of ranchers are really working on extending that grazing season for obvious input cost reasons, but watering is usually the biggest constraint.
Watering is always the biggest constraint. There's so many people like, oh, we want to do some fall grazing. Fencing's easy. I can teach you about fencing in a matter of about 15 minutes in person, and you can leave here with very little input cost, and you got your fence put up, and you have no real ability to actually water them. And without water, there is no fall grazing. Obviously, it depends on your water source. Are we running on a rural water system? Are we running on a well, or are we running off or sucking out of a dugout or slough? So there's some things like, and not everything that I'm going to talk about that we actually sell here. So these are things like we'll just talk with customers. So like if you're running out of a dugout or a slough, so it's just a random pond of water. I've had customers will just set up, they'll just buy a generator. They'll put a certain amount of gas in said generator. Once they figure it out, and they'll just run the generator with the hose pumping it up to a random like 2-horse stock or horse trailer that's worthless to most people, and they'll just have a tank sticking out of the back of it because that's where the generator can be. And once it runs out of gas, once they have the timing figured out, and it just continually flows. And when it overflows, it just runs right back into the dugout or into a slough or water source. So that's a quick, easy way to do it. Not wildly efficient, and if bad blizzards show up or something like that, it doesn't really work the best, but it's that continual flow. It never shuts off. The generator is always running. It's a 24/7 run, and you just build a certain amount of fuel source for that generator to keep going. So that's one really quick, easy option that I've had a handful of guys do, and it works. It works fine. It all is based off of number of head. If your water tank can handle the quantity of livestock that happens, it doesn't have to be in a stock trailer. It can just be out in the wide open, as long as you have the ability where that water can run back to its current source or its original source. After that, if that's not your go-to, you're going to want to go, you probably have like maybe a deep hydrant, that 7-8 feet deep hydrant, depending on what part of our country you happen to be in. And then you need continuous flow, because once you get to that 0 degrees Fahrenheit, we're freezing, or 32 below, we're freezing. And so you got to get constant flow going. We run a lot of this current system right here. This keeps the valve underneath the water. So this is a brick that we have. You can buy it at any random hardware store. We developed this stainless steel system here that clamps onto the brick. This is a great company called Watson Manufacturing. Makes great products, but it's a continual flow system. I don't know if you can see it from that side, but you just turn this petcock on. And so even when this float reaches the top, and so this will shut off the valve. So normal summer grazing, that's fine, we're shut off. But once it shuts off, this is below the valve, and now this water will continually flow through this copper tubing. Now you can change how much that's flowing by adjusting your petcock. The other thing with this company that's really cool is you can actually run a double copper tubing, so you can have one go this way and shoot over towards the side of your tank, and you can have another one come up and go right underneath your valve. And you want to keep that like 4 to potentially even 6 inches below your float here, so that it doesn't freeze in. Because if you do that, it'll keep just a little bit of a ring of water around the outside of this valve, so it doesn't freeze in. So as soon as the cattle drink, it drops down, and then the natural valve itself just starts flowing, and this copper tubing is no longer happening anymore. It's just letting the water come out of here, and that continual flow. But as soon as it shuts off, and we're at like, we'll just say 10 o'clock at night, and the cattle are no longer needing water. They ate, they grazed, they're good. It's only onesie, twosie cows. This is continually flowing. And what happens there is whatever water source is feeding this, it's still going. We've had customers here in North Dakota, right in McIntosh County, they go into January and they're just running off of a hydrant into just a basic 8 or 10 foot steel tank. Whatever random brand you want to come up, H&W, Tartar, it doesn't really matter. Just a basic steel tank and a hydrant. I had landlords call me that were not real happy with me promoting this because they were really worried about freezing up their water lines. And I said, just trust me, it will work. We got to monitor it. It's something you got to check daily, because nothing's foolproof. There's not one thing that I will say here or any product that I will promote that is foolproof, that is the silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. But this is a great thing. We've sold these for years, and it's been a great tool that gets guys on corn stalks, on any form of residue grazing. It's huge. The other thing that people got to consider when they're doing residue grazing, it depends on what you're grazing. If it's a cover crop and you're talking like turnips and beets and whatever cocktail you're putting together, there's a lot of moisture in those actual products. So cattle actually need less water consumption when they're grazing a cocktail type cover crop like that. So we can kind of monitor that. And it also depends on what the requirements of that animal is, how late you calved and what type of calves are still on that cow, if they've been pulled or not. Water consumption doesn't need to be as high as you sometimes think. There are a lot of ranchers that do believe in like those cows can just eat the snow. Yes, they can, but they're consuming a lot of energy while they're eating that snow to bring the temperature of that snow up to a proper temperature for them to utilize. So I'm not a big believer in a true beef production agriculture that snow is going to give them enough water content to do everything that you need that animal to do. Another option still made by Watson here, it's called a sweeper, and this will change as the water temperature changes. Once it gets so cold, I think it's 41 degrees, it turns on. What happens then is It's the same concept here. This bleeder valve you'll have on, and so even when this valve is off, floats up, tank is full, this will start peeing water right out of here, but it's all based off of temperature, not based off of the float. The float shuts it off, it's just hanging out, shut off, valve is done. But once this little cylinder right here gets so cold, it's gonna open up and water is gonna start peeing out of here. And it'll go more aggressively as it gets colder, so that it'll keep this open. And what that does is not so much about this valve. I'm not really worried about the valve at all, because the valve in this setup, the way we design this, it's at the bottom of the tank. If your tank is completely frozen solid, they've been out there way too long. I'm more worried about the water source. I'm worried about the hydrant. I'm worried about whatever hose you've chose to feed it. That's what I'm worried about here. So this is just keeping your hose and your hydrant open. So those are really good. These two are my favorite fall grazing. Get into that January, totally weather dependent. We've had some really tough Decembers, but historically in North Dakota, we can handle this type of setup mid-December to early January. It's not all the time though. Tall Tom Szymanski out of Fargo, he might argue with me on how good the weather can be in North Dakota at certain times of the year, but these two are kind of big pushers that I have no problem standing behind for that fall grazing situation.
Okay. Is there anything you haven't touched on or shown with fall grazing or those temporary waters that you want to bring up today?
Yeah, just one. It's an easier system. I'll go grab it right here. Then we'll get into winter grazing. This same concept of this temperature change situation here by Watson, Freeze Miser does a phenomenal job. It's the exact same concept of keeping hydrants open, and you can just tie it right onto your hydrant. When that valve shuts off, this just starts bleeding out water. It comes right out the side. It's a very economical choice for keeping hydrants open. You just have to have it prepared that it's going into another tank, or have your tanks adjusted correctly. Otherwise you end up with a huge ice mess. And with any of these, they take adjustment, and it takes figuring out how much water your cattle are drinking. And so you might need to adjust these. That's why I love Watson. They're so easy to adjust. It's literally just a carabiner where you just are adjusting the float down a notch or two. You got to learn. One year you had 80 cattle there, the next year you have 60 cattle there. You're going to adjust how high that valve is going and when it will shut down. I mean, for this example, we have these chains welded up to just kind of example what a flow could look like. Normally these chains are loose. You got to learn your cattle, and you got to learn what their water consumption is. Without knowing that, there's no person or algorithm or AI that can tell you, oh, 60 head of cattle will drink this much every day. Oh, there's a ballpark, but there's never a guarantee, because it's so based off of the feedstuffs that they're eating and there's so many variables that come into play there. So for fall grazing, you got these options, or you just got by gosh, by golly, and you are just randomly turning on hydrants and turning them off. Those are really your options of high level maintenance of the ranch producer, and you're out there turning the hydrant on, letting it fill for so long, all the cattle come in, they drink, you shut it off, you let them drink it down, and then you come back the next day and you sit there with an axe and you're chipping ice away and things of that nature.
Yeah, those systems aren't very fun.
No, they are. They're work.
They work to a point, but I know we have a few setups for fall grazing where you turn the water on, you check the temperature, you turn it on and off, and you go from there. So
yeah.
Are you looking for new ways to beef up your favorite beef meals? Let me introduce you to my favorite seasoning, Pluck. I pluck my steaks, I pluck my burgers, I pluck my eggs, I pluck just about everything I cook, because this variety of seasonings not only complements animal protein, but also allows me to incorporate organ meats into my diet without tasting them. You can try it for yourself at eatpluck.com and use the code Shaye for a 15% discount. That code is spelled SHAYEWANNER, and again, that website is eatpluck.com. Okay, so winter watering.
Winter watering gets, we'll just say, a lot easier. We're going to go over this direction for winter watering, and I don't sell everything here, and there's going to be people that have a lot of opinions on what the best watering system is for winter watering. We can talk tire tanks. Tire tanks have their place. I don't currently sell tire tanks but they do have their place, especially in the winter system. If you are using tire tanks for winter watering, my recommendation is clean them out. That's my beef with tire tanks, is people don't clean them out often enough. The algae buildup and things of that nature cause problems. However, they are indestructible. They do bring a lot of insulation to them naturally as a big thick chunk of rubber, and they have, most of the good tire companies or good tire tank companies have really good riser tubes. If you're going to go to that route, make sure that they have stainless steel bolts, not just regular galvanized bolts holding everything down. They got to have stainless steel bolts. They got to have a really thick bottom plate, like, because that when that stuff rusts out in like 10 years, you are hating your life in January or February. So you gotta like buy good. Like I said, we don't sell them, but when you're looking at them, buy good quality stuff that's gonna last, because they don't fail in July. They fail in January and February when your hands are freezing and now you're dealing with cattle that need water, and it's just terrible. But tire tanks are a good option. Very popular in our tri-state area, maybe even quad-state area. Tire tanks are a great option. But my big thing there, if I'm going to make a recommendation, is clean them out. Get a transfer pump. I don't care if it's battery operated or electrical operated. Get a transfer pump of some form and clean them out often, because fresh water is so important. Two other options that I do sell here. We have the Cobalt waters. It's an energy-free water. And if they work in the state of North Dakota and most of Canada, I don't know the entire country, but they work for majority of the state of North Dakota. I have multiple customers. We just started selling these here this year. And it was purely, this is 100% a product that is also from customer base. They about got pitchforks and fire to say, you got to start selling these things. We love them, but we can't afford to keep shipping them one at a time to our personal places. So we got these in, but don't skimp on how deep the tubes need to go. In North Dakota, we got to go deep. We got to go at least 8 foot deep. We need to get that thermal heat to come up. These can be energy free. I'm not saying you'll never see ice. You will need to, you got to monitor these. In North Dakota, I don't care if it's a Ritchie water that's hooked up to power, you need to monitor them. Water is that important. But most of my customers, they can go out and break the ice away with a claw hammer, or maybe just even the random farmer pliers that's sitting on your pouch, and you can just bust a little bit of that 1/8 inch chunk of ice away. This is the long tube that actually goes into the ground. That goes 100% into the ground. And then this is what they drink out of, but this needs to be buried to about here. So you're only going to have about, we'll call it 2 foot exposed out of everything you see here. And what's awesome here is they have the same concept going on inside as I'm describing over here, is that valve and the water supply is all in the water. The water itself doesn't freeze. The top of the water is what freezes. And it takes a long time from the top of the water to go all the way through to freeze an ice cube up 100%. If we end up with some frost or some freezing that we have a lot of issues with, this whole tube can come out. The whole water supply. This is what the water supply looks like inside this one. You can actually, there's bolt holes in there, and typically it's bolted in. You just remove those bolts and you can take this whole thing out, and you can either dump it, or if you really have a bad problem, you hadn't been there for a number of days and it's out way in the elements with no wind protection of any kind, no trees, no nothing, you can actually shut a valve off right underneath. There's enough hose that it comes with. Shut the valve off, disconnect it, and take this into your shop and thaw it out and bring it back. And it comes with a cover. You can put a cover right over the top so it's trapping in the geothermal heat. This is what the cover looks like on this large diameter one. And you can trap all that in while you're thawing out that main water source. So a great product. It took me years to just buy into it, but it took me a lot of YouTube videos to actually truly believe in it. And then it really took me about, maybe I was a little slow learner, but probably like 20 customers like begging me, like just start selling them. But great when you don't have the ability to bring a power source to your water. Excuse me. You bring geothermal heat up to your water, and this product is phenomenal. Insulated all the way from right here, which would actually be buried to here, all the way down about 8 feet. That's all insulation. So it's not letting any of that geothermal heat escape into the earth. So it's trapping it and bringing it all the way up and keeping it going. I mean, I got guys, they'll only run I had one guy who's out of Bismarck, he runs like 5 horses on them. I mean, we're not talking volume of livestock, Where some people are like, oh, you got to have 300 head of cattle or 300 head of blah, blah, blah to keep it open. The guy at Bismarck, and I think he might have had some wind protection and stuff like that, but I don't care what wind protection is. In North Dakota in January, February at 30 below with wind chill, I don't care with 300 head. It's dang cold, and it's tough to keep a water source open. And he could come out with his pliers out of his little pouch, and he would just pop around a little bit, throw a little bit of ice off to the side, and it's good to go. Cool thing with this, you do want to put some product around it. It doesn't have anything to do with keeping the water open, but they make the tire mats that you can fit that'll put all the way around this, so the cattle are standing on that instead of dirt. There is a company, I can't think of their name, where they actually make a concrete pad that's in little quarter circles. They can go all the way around it as well, because it's a good place for the cattle to stand on.
While you're on the topic of concrete pads and talking about some more permanent solutions, do you want to touch a little bit on what producers should keep in mind when they put a concrete pad in? You know, how big should it be, etc.?
Absolutely. The concrete pads are just protection and landings around any water source. I don't care if it's a tire tank. It doesn't matter. Cattle wash out every spot that they're ever at, because if you make them step up on it, they wash away that landing zone as they walk away every time. The concrete pads that are currently available, even including what I sell, and some of it's just based off of weight, like you can only handle lifting so much. We sell a 5x5 and a 6x6 concrete pad. 90% of those, or now not almost 99% of those, are all sold for Ritchie waters, because they have a hole in there for the riser tube. If I had the ability to lift more, or the ranchers had the ability to lift more, because these concrete pads can weigh right up to a ton, and so skid steers struggle once you get past a ton. The common rancher skid steer, and if you're not in some form of commercial landscaping business, a 1-ton skid steer capability, because it's not just the 1 ton that's close to you, it's 6 to 8 feet out from you, and it makes it really challenging to lift. The perfect situation, in my opinion, is you want to have enough padding or landing, or whatever term you want to use, to put all 4 feet of whatever species you're feeding on it. So my thing is to keep it ground level. Don't make them step up, because if they step up, it's no problem, but they got to step down, and every time they step down, they're washing out. So try to get enough space so that all 4 feet of that animal can stand up on top of that pad, whether it's a rubber mat of some form or concrete. I mean, pick whatever material you're trying to use. There's rubber belting. There's all kinds of stuff that people keep coming up with. And there's new stuff we'll find out in 10 years that we don't even know exists. Could be wind tower blades, as far as I know, that we're going to be using as some form of a livestock windbreak or water pad. Get it big enough, go bigger. So those are the two things that are readily available that a lot of people buy. It's going to be a rubber mat of some form, whether it's a weaved together tire mat or it's concrete. But a lot of people, like around, if you've been at Wald Fencing, that I talk them into is, I'll go with rough cut green treated lumber. Go big, because you can go 16 foot by 16 foot. And now you can use a 6x6 timber, put it underground, just make it all level, and you can start screwing all this together, and you can build that in your shop. You know how hard it is to find a concrete guy to come out and pour, like, I don't know what that would be, like a quarter of a yard? Like, no one's coming out to form that, or you couldn't even get a cement truck to come out there. So you're buying all these 50-pound bags of concrete, and it's never the same. So if you can't buy a precast, something that is of your nature of what you want, go with a rough cut lumber, but get treated. Don't go untreated. Untreated won't last for at all. It'll last like, I don't know, 5 years at best, I would say, because the elements we're putting in, we're going manure, we're going soil, and we're going moisture. Like, the three things are like the worst things that could ever happen to wood. So go with a treated version of it, and even if you need to pre-treat it or treat it again with another preservative, because you're putting in the worst elements you can possibly find. This is even worse than what you can put like a corner post in, is water, manure, feet, everything about it. But I have a lot of guys, myself included, I have not put in a concrete or a tire mat pad in a decade now. All of mine are going to be built out of rough cut treated lumber, 2-inch minimum thickness, and I'm going to go either 8x8 or 8x16 pads, so the entire livestock can step up on there. They're on it, and I didn't think it was that big a deal until I had an underground water break. And what was really cool is I could pick the whole thing up, set it off to the side, excavate the whole thing out. I didn't do it personally, but I hired somebody. They fixed it, and I used that same pad again. I didn't break any part of it. The concrete pads, you start moving them too many times, you're breaking them. This rough cut lumber, you picked it all back up again and set it right back down in the same hole. So it was a reusable thing. No, you don't always want to prepare for failure, but in that case, I was preparing for failure, and it worked out in my advantage.
Okay, Rocky. So while we're on kind of some of the permanent watering solutions, you've got some examples of Ritchie tanks behind you. Let's have you cover those.
Okay, so Ritchie water, it's been a tried and true product for North Dakota, the upper Dakotas and Montana, everything upper in the cold temperatures. This is, the product's been around, I don't know the exact number of years it's been around. Be careful with Ritchie, because they will make products. They make an all plastic one where the trough is plastic and everything. And some people will try to talk you into buying those because they're cheap. Do not buy them if you live in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, anything along that parallel or north of us. Do not buy them. They're meant for inside of maybe a horse barn at best, or south of Nebraska. I'm very much against the all plastic trough situation. There are dealers out there that will promote them, and it's a cost thing. It looks cheaper initially, but you spend more money on tank heaters to keep them open than you will on just buying the right product. So we only sell the Omni versions, where they're going to have the stainless steel trough, they're going to have elements underneath, and that is the only way you need to go if you're up here. You go south of Nebraska, those plastic systems, I bet they'll work fine. I got no beef with them down there. Up here, it's a salesman that doesn't actually use them that is probably promoting them because it's a cost thing. So just be careful with that. Ritchie makes great products. All of their products are great as long as they're sold in the right regions. So just watch some of that stuff. Their parts are phenomenal. They're really minor when it comes down to servicing them out all winter long, or pre-winter, or in North Dakota's case, most of the time they call me in late November when they find out the one unit's not working anymore, and it's a panic situation. But now all they have is all plastic on the outside, fully insulated, and then stainless steel troughs. And they go from, we sold one that was 12 feet long. It's the longest one they make. They're really terrible to ship, but they can take care of a lot of livestock. I think they have like 8 elements in them, somewhere in there. Really cool. Could take care of a lot. We do them in a lot of the feedlot situation where they need more trough, where more animals can drink at a time. Omni 10, Omni 5, Omni 3. These are the bread and butter of the Ritchie world and the beef industry, and really even in most of the sheep industry, it's perfectly fine too. Once in a while, the small ruminants, maybe you got to build a little bit of a stair for them to get up to, but these things just work. There's a couple things like that Ritchie waters, they offer but don't always promote and don't always push, that can make their actual tanks work so much better. An uneducated salesperson wouldn't even sell. They'll just sell you the random basic model and you go off with it. One thing that I think we're at like 95% of all people who buy Ritchies from us, this is how they come. You get the riser tube, valves up above the water. It's going to hang out up here in the top of your riser. Doesn't matter which tank you're at, it's way up here. So in North Dakota, we deal with the wind quite often, and so the wind is sucking in there, even though they have it protected as best they can. I mean, like I said, the company tried to fix everything they could, but it's out in the elements of the wind. So we sell, like I said, 95% of our time, we sell this bulkhead fitting. It's all it really is. There's nothing real fancy about it, but it's the same thing, but now the valve is down in the water 100% of the time. And you got to be careful. You got to watch. This is a dairy industry thing. Dairy inspectors can track in some unknown way a disease back to a dairy animal because the power went out one time back in 1970 or something like that, and the 5 gallons of water that's left in the Ritchie tank backflowed back into a water source, a normal human water source. So you do have to watch to make sure all policies are met within your county, water district, state, whatever the case may be. But this is huge. So when this is down in the water, now your elements that you're already paying the electricity for, and they're like Omni 10, there's 4 elements, Omni 5, 2 elements, Omni 3, 2 elements, the big guys have 6 to 8 elements. They're doing the job of keeping this open the whole time. So as soon as this water shuts off. It's up in the air. This valve is down here. Well, the water shuts off on this one here at the bulkhead fitting. This is all fully exposed to all elements, and it's cold out here. You know, so I highly recommend this as long as we're passing or meeting all regulations for your area. Other added benefits that I sell with, and I can't believe how many people don't know this, but this stupid little aluminum plate, it's a 4x6 aluminum plate. Anyone who has a Ritchie water will know exactly what I'm going to do with this. But all you do is you wedge this in between. So we're up underneath the tank now, and we're going to wedge it between the element and the bottom of the tank. And what that does is it distributes that heat out, because aluminum does a phenomenal job of distributing heat, great conduction of that, and it stops that calcium buildup that happens on the top of your tank that we all fight because it builds up. There's just heat and water. The stainless steel trough can only do so much, but this distributes that heat out so well that you don't end up with elements falling out. This plastic housing that they have now, elements can just fall out. It's a weird vibration of the earth. I don't know what causes it. It happened on my personal place. It happens on a lot of people's places. Those elements will fall out. Well, you wedge this in there, and now the element is a lot more snug. But also the bigger benefit is that heat is distributed out farther in the tank. So this little, I don't even know what it costs. It's super cheap. You can probably make them yourself if you don't want to buy them from somebody, but it's a 4x6 sheet of aluminum that distributes heat out tremendously. Last thing that I can think of that I would add into, that I think I personally have added into every Ritchie, it's a thermal cube. Super simple little tool. So I add in heating elements, a heat bulb, a something that I have directed down to my riser tube. And what this does is, I can't believe how many people don't know this exists. It's cheap. They're like 20 bucks. I don't know, I don't see a price tag here. Doesn't matter. But what it does is you plug your heat lamp into here, or your light bulb or whatever, just to keep some heat going downstairs, down below the riser tube or whatever of your Ritchie or whatever fountain, doesn't matter. And it turns off and shuts off at 35 degrees and 45 degrees. Nobody goes out and shuts their Ritchies off in May or turns them on and off in October, November, and December, where our temperature will fluctuate from 80 degrees to 40 degrees to 20 degrees to 80 degrees and back and forth. This is acting the same as what we have over here for our winter grazing with the freeze miser or this wiper right here that it checks on the temperature of the water. This is doing the same thing. As it's sensing the temperature is dropped, it turns that heat lamp on or turns that light bulb on, and then it keeps that heat going. But when the heat gets above, and some of it's just geothermal, the outside temperature could still be 20 degrees, but that heat rise that's coming out of there, the heat lamp's not turning on because the earth is giving it to it. So it saves you actual electricity instead of just heat lamp stays on until the bulb burns out. And that's what a lot of ranchers will do. They just leave that heat lamp on, and then they come back and change all the heat lamps out, well, right around this time of year. In October, they're like, oh, we gotta go service out all of our Ritchies. And it's most of the time they're just changing out their heat lamps. You put in this product, because most everybody who installs a Ritchie also puts an outlet in there, because the power source is coming in. So they put an outlet in there. Well, this just plugs right in to an outlet. So you can actually have two sources in there. You can, but for the most part, all I've ever found is I only need one outlet, and I just plug one in, and then that heat lamp will shut off when it's not being needed. This time of year, it happens, oh my gosh, probably 15 times a day, as the temperature is changing. And in the spring, North Dakota spring work, you're just trying to keep your head above water, and so you don't have time to go out and check every one of your water fountains. So just let this tool do the job for you, and it shuts itself off when it's not needed. Typically during the day, the sun is giving some power. We're finally back in March, April, May, where the sun's got some power, and our Ritchies or our fountains are doing fine. And then at nighttime when it gets cold, it kicks on. It keeps you going, and it actually saves you electricity on your elements. They're not having to work as hard, and they're being able to shut themselves off because they have a thermostat on them too. Big thing is adjust your thermostat. I do recommend that. Most people don't. They just turn them on high, and you can make ramen noodles in your kettle's Ritchie at some point. But this is a really cool, really cheap product that I find a lot of people don't know about. But those are about it for the add-ons that I would do to a Ritchie.
Okay. So, Rocky, one thing we haven't touched on is, or the random, tank heaters that you can plug in. I mean, I grew up throwing heaters into tire tanks, whatever it may be. Do you want to share about some of those?
Yeah, there's only really a couple of major tire tank companies. Where did I put my tire tanks? Right over here. Miller makes tire tanks, and Farm Innovator. Those are the main two companies. There's probably more, and I'll get blasted for not mentioning them. These are the main two that I do. So there's floating, and you can run your random floating. Like North Dakota, I don't even know why we make 250 watt or 500 watt. Everybody just buys the 1500 watt, some form of tank heaters. I'm not a floating tank guy. I don't like, they make guards, you can put guards around them, things of that nature. But if you got a plastic tank, now you're melting your plastic tank. If you got a rubber tank, you're gonna start melting rubber. They're fine for steel tanks. Well, nobody's buying this thing for their steel tank. But floating tank heaters, what I don't like about them is they're just at the top of the surface, so they're only warming up the very top 1 to 2 inches of a water tank, and then that heat is dissipating up into the air, and it's gone to keep the rest of the earth warm. So I'm not a big floating guy. We sell a pile of them, but I'm not a big promoter of it. If you come into me, I'm not going to talk you into buying a floating de-icer or tank heater. I do love a good submersible heater though. As long as and I don't care what brand. Miller makes a great one too. Farm Innovator is the one that I am currently in love with. They seem to do the best. They last the longest. And like I said, there could be other companies that make better ones that I'm not even aware of. And hopefully with this podcast that somebody puts me online with blah, blah, blah company is the best and they're the cheapest and they last the longest. And I get to learn something from this. But what I like about a sinking de-icer, if it's the proper one, it's good for tire tanks, plastic tanks, steel tanks. Won't melt anything, won't hurt anything. They're protected correctly. But you're heating water from the bottom up. And we all know that heat rises so that everything that's down there is coming to the surface and it's going to keep a bigger area open. It's going to keep the ice off the majority of the top of the tank, or at least the area that you have that heater under, so that where them cattle are drinking, they can actually drink it. But I am a much bigger believer in a sinking de-icer or sinking heater, whatever term you want to use, than I am a floater. They do make them where you can put them in the drain plugs, and they have the 2 elements that come out. We have those as well. Not going to be the thing that's going to be on my farm because it's too one-sided. You can only use it on that tank, and typically whenever you put it in that drain plug, it's oxidized to that drain plug and you can never take it away. You end up wrecking stuff. It doesn't get used more than about 1 year. So my recommendation is go to a sinking de-icer. Much better option for you because, like I said, heat rises. If you have it right at the surface of it, because that's only about 1 inch below the water surface, that heat is going away right away. Where here, I get that heat that keeps traveling upward, and it heats the water up and the ice around it up. So that's my big promotion. If you're going to go de-icers or heaters, go with a sinking one, but make sure it can last for any one of your tanks you have. Plastic, steel, or rubber. I don't think there's a 3rd tank or 4th tank out there that I'm not thinking of, but those are the ones that I'd recommend.
All right. Well, I'm sure anyone watching on YouTube, you can comment if you have anything else on there, because I like to learn new things. Rocky already said he likes to learn new things. So if you're out there listening and have other brands or other types of tanks, be sure to put that on there. Before we wrap up today, Rocky, is there anything else you want to share with the listeners?
Only thing I would share is share what you know, but don't be arrogant about it. A lot of people are willing to learn as long as you don't come off like that guy. And we all know what that guy sounds like. But even our stores, we want to learn. We don't know it all. We try to learn as much as we can and share as much knowledge as we can. But we learn a lot from our customers. Also, like early in the deal, you asked my favorite thing about the beef industry. I'll tell you one of my least favorite things about the beef industry is the beef industry keeps a lot of their knowledge to themselves, and instead of sharing what they're doing with their neighbor. I catch it often of like, what bull are you using? I don't want to tell you because I don't want you to be as good as me on raising heifers, or my steers got to look better at the sales barn, and they got this little man syndrome of trying to be the best beef producer in the county or in the region, or whatever term you want to go. Share what you learn. When you go to an egg show and you learn about a new product or learn about something new, tell your neighbor, or tell somebody, tell your best friend, or tell your biggest enemy. I don't even care. But if you share with them and they become more successful, unknowingly you will become more successful, because the beef industry itself will rise together and will not be able to be stopped. So share what you know. The worst thing you can do is be the smartest person in the room and not share it with anybody. But don't be arrogant about it. You want to share it where you actually want other people to learn from you. So that'd be my last tidbit, is share what you know.
Absolutely. Well, folks, if you're listening, thanks for joining us today. And be sure to check the show notes for any resources that were mentioned throughout today's podcast. And remember, the best way to support this podcast and all your other favorite podcasts is to leave a rating or review, and better yet, share it with a friend, because in the beef industry, word of mouth still means a lot more than anything else. But with that, happy ranching, folks.